And welcome back, Professor Almeida, jpalmeida.com. And in this video, I want to give you a quick primer on Microsoft Access. Now, it's not going to be a full tutorial, but I hope it's enough to help you get started. So why would we want to use Access? Well, picture this. You are a book publishing company, or you run a book publishing company, and you're putting out textbooks to college campuses. Those college campuses are your customers. And perhaps you have a list of those customers in a Word document somewhere. The important financial transactions with your customers are probably stored in some Excel spreadsheet. Now, you have book representatives. These are your employees. They're the folks that go onto college campuses to solicit feedback from professors and to sell your company's solutions. Perhaps you have a list of your employees or representatives in another Word document, and other pertinent data such as their starting date and their salary, perhaps that's in an Excel spreadsheet. Wouldn't it be great if you can get all of that data together and presented in a well-organized fashion? That's where Access comes in. Now, I have already created my own database here, and one thing you need to understand with Access is that you're not necessarily saving a database in the same way that you would save a Word document or an Excel workbook or whatnot. And let me show you how here. When you go to create a blank desktop database, okay, you will be prompted where to save it beforehand. So when you open it in Access, it's automatically unlocked, and whatever changes you're making are being automatically updated, whether it's individual records, as you will see momentarily, or different objects. Those are what you are actually saving in the database. Now, as I said, I have my own database here, so we'll go ahead and open that. So this is Access, and here's the navigation pane on the left. In the title bar, you see the full path to my database here. And as I mentioned, there are objects in Access, and the individual objects consist of one of four things. Tables, which are basically the heart of your database, as you will see momentarily. Queries, which are questions that you ask about your data. Forms, which you can generate from tables and queries, as well as reports, which you can also generate from your tables and queries. So tables, queries, forms, and reports are the four objects in Access. Now, you're saving those objects instead of the database as a whole. As you can see here, I have two tables, one for my customers and the other for the book reps. Now, why is this important? Because you want to make sure when you are considering design decisions that you have your data presented in a meaningful way that also highlights the relationship between the two. Here's what I mean by that. You'll notice that for every customer, they have a unique ID number. Think of it this way. You have a student ID number, right? And when you go to the bookstore or anywhere else on campus, what's the first thing that you're asked for? Your student ID number, right? That student ID number uniquely identifies you. Well, in Access, each record here for Samuel Wallace, John Beeler, and so forth, each record here is uniquely identified by some kind of ID number. This is what's also called the primary key in Access. So you'll see that each customer here has a unique ID number. Now, likewise, with each customer, they have a representative assigned to them. And each representative has a unique ID number. Now, why are we using ID numbers anyway instead of just putting the representative's name? Well, this comes back to best practices, because if you look at the representatives table, each representative is uniquely assigned an ID number as well. Now, why should we use ID numbers instead of, let's say, Billy Rosewood? Well, for one, if we were to put Billy Rosewood and then, have the other employees here, this is going to introduce redundancy, and it opens up the possibility for making mistakes. And so one of the things you want to do in Access is to ensure that you don't really have redundancy and that you're trying to conserve space, right? So as you can see here, I have my table of representatives, and you'll notice that each representative has a different set of customers. Now, you're going to see another concept in Access, which is what's called the one-to-many relationship. And it kind of makes sense when you think about it, right? You have one book rep assigned to many customers. Usually it's not really the other way around, right? So this is something to consider when you are building your tables. Now, another thing to consider, what kind of fields do you plan on having? Anyway, this is Datasheet View. Looks a lot like an Excel spreadsheet, doesn't it? Your columns here are your field names. Each field has a specific piece of information. And then you have your records. Records can consist everything about that particular individual. It can have places, events, things like that. So for each record here, you see the name of the person, the company they represent, their address, phone number, how much they paid, how much they owe, how much in returns, and the book rep assigned to them. So each record is unique, and like I said, once you have your field set up, you could then figure out what you're going to do for your records. So let me quickly show you how to build your field list here. See where it says click to add? You would click to add, and you have different data types here. A lot of times you're going to be choosing short text. Now you could see here, for example, with the unique ID number in the Table Tools Fields tab, you'll see that it's short text and the field size is set to 5. Now keep in mind the default is 255, but again, going back to best practices, you want to make sure that any user who comes along, they cannot change things to make it inconsistent. For example, having ID numbers longer than 5 characters. So you set this limit here, and again, you can see that's the case for last name. Field size is set to 40. You can make it whatever you want, but again, it depends on your best practices. You also need to decide how are you going to present addresses. Are you going to use abbreviations? Are they going to have periods? So you need to make those decisions at the very beginning before you have a large number of records. Same thing here with the state. You see the field size is set to 2 because we are using postal abbreviations. Now you'll see that the dollar amounts here, this is set to currency format. So again, when you're creating new fields, be mindful of the data type that you'll be using. Anyway, I hope this helps. This is kind of a brief primer into Access, and really the heart of it is in these tables. Once you create your tables, you can then generate queries. You can create new forms and reports based off the tables you have. So if you have any questions, let me know what you think. Leave them in the comment section below, and we'll talk again soon.